Good morning. I will call to order the House Committee on Water and Land for hearing Tuesday, February 16th, 8:30 a.m., State Capitol Conference Room 430 for the purposes of hearing numerous bills. Thank you, members, for being here, and thank you to our testifiers who have sent in written testimony, as well as those who are here today to provide oral testimony. Thank you very much. I'd like to start the meeting off to remind folks that in order to allow as many people to testify as possible, there will be a 2-minute time limit per testifier. Because morning hearings must adjourn prior to the noon floor session, not all testifiers may have the opportunity to testify. In that event, please know that your written testimony will be considered by the committee. Please keep yourself muted and your video off while waiting to testify and after your testimony is complete. The Zoom chat function will allow you to chat with the technical staff only. Please use the chat only for technical issues. If you are disconnected unexpectedly, you may attempt to rejoin the meeting. If disconnected while presenting testimony, take a deep breath, rejoin, and hopefully you'll be allowed to continue as long as time permits. Please note the House is not responsible for any bad internet connections on the testifier's end. In the event of a catastrophic network failure, it may be necessary to reschedule the hearing or schedule a meeting for decision-making. In that case, an appropriate notice will be posted. Please maintain decorum. Please refrain from profanity or uncivil behavior. Such behavior may be grounds for removal from the hearing without the ability to rejoin. Thank you very much again for joining us today. So let's go ahead and start our hearing. Our first measure we'll be hearing is House Bill 414 relating to aquatic resources. And we have testimony providing comments from DLNR, Mr. Brian Nielsen. Mr. Nielsen, the floor is yours. Please proceed.
Good morning, Chair Tarnas and Vice Chair Bronco, members of the committee. Brian Nielsen, Administrator, Division of Aquatic Resources. We appreciate the intent of this bill, but do provide some comments for amending it. Thank you.
Thank you very much. We received testimony with comments from the University of Hawaii from Judy Lemus, testimony in support from Hawaii Reef and Ocean Coalition, testimony in support from Bill Coney with the Legacy Reef Foundation. Mr. Coney, please proceed with your testimony.
All right. Am I on?
Yes, please proceed. We see you and we hear you.
All right. Sorry, it froze up in my end. Good morning, Chair Tarnas and the Vice Chair Bronco and committee members. I appreciate the opportunity to testify this morning. Legacy Reef Foundation supports the bill. We feel it's a very good bill for the state of Hawaii and for our marine life out here. We would like to consider adding an amendment to allow for research and educational purposes if we needed to receive coral for that purpose outside. We'd like the bill to be amended and reflect that. We feel that's important for educational purposes in Hawaii, as well as research into the coral biology. Thank you again for the moment to testify, and appreciate the opportunity. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Next, we have testimony in opposition from Randy Fernley. Testimony providing comments from Bronson Kainoa Kiyoshi Azama, and testimony in support from Henry Booth. Mr. Bronson Kainoa Kiyoshi Azama, if you're available.
Aloha mai kākou. Mahalo for allowing me to speak today. I'm just speaking on behalf of regarding HB, the bill that was talked about previously regarding coral. We just have some concerns regarding utilizing this resource and purchasing this resource for cultural reasons, because here in He'ea Fish Pond, which is featured in my background, they do purchase coral to help with the rehabilitation of this site. And there is some concern too, because we do purchase coral resources regarding building even new cultural centers, like for example, like Sitar has a hale, or a traditional Hawaiian housing site that's made from coral, where its pa is made from coral. So just requesting an amendment to allow it for traditional customary practices, as well as rehabilitation of historic sites, which a lot of Hawaiian sites actually do utilize coral in some form, and even the development of new cultural sites as well. And that would be it for my testimony. Mahalo.
Thank you very much. That's all the testimony we have before us today. Members, any questions of our testifiers? No.
I have a question.
Representative Morikawa,
I'm
please
just-
proceed.
I'm just about to, I know I'm a sponsor on this bill too, but I'm worried because, I don't know if Dale and I can help you with this. Coral base is usually purchased by government to fill certain areas, parking lots, etc. Would this be affected? Brian, or?
Yeah, I would have to get back to you on that. That would be another division that regulates, coral products for, construction purposes. So I can follow up with you on that.
Thank you, Chair.
Certainly. I have a follow-up question for Mr. Nielsen. My understanding is that there are also corals that are grown in aquaculture for use and for commercial sale in aquaria. Are you familiar with that? Mr. Fernley submitted some testimony. So are you familiar with that? And it seems like this bill might have some inadvertent impacts on that industry as well.
I'm not familiar with any of that type of activity going on within the state of Hawaii. But I'm sure that occurs in other, countries or maybe even other states. And, quite possibly they're affected. They would need, a Department of Ag permit to bring in live coral. But in terms of dead coral, I'm not familiar with what happens with that.
Okay. All right. Thank you. Representative Kobayashi.
I can help you with that. The Waikiki Aquarium grows coral, which it either sells or gives away to other aquariums. Most of these are rather exotic and colorful corals that can be grown, of course, in Hawaii much better, especially under aeration, than in many mainland jurisdictions.
Thank you. I appreciate that. Your wide range of knowledge is impressive, Representative Kobayashi.
No.
Thank you. Other questions for our testifiers, members? Yes, certainly. Representative Bronco.
Just for Brian Nielsen. So I'm the introducer of this bill, and the real intent of this bill was to stop, here in Hawaii, we have a special relationship here with coral, and we want to protect our coral. And we also don't want to create other markets abroad for coral as well. We want to be consistent in our policy making. And so I just wanted to ask if you could expand on probably the decorative side of using dead coral or in jewelry. Is there a permitting process, or how big is that market? If you can talk a little bit on that.
I just first like to say we definitely support the intent of this bill. In terms of the market, I'm not super knowledgeable on that. I know that there is some use of black coral, of course, is one of the most popular coral products locally. I'm not super familiar with coral products other than black coral in terms of the importation. But I think it is a good bill. Corals are in decline worldwide. So regulations to prevent the harvest of wild coral, I think is really important. But sorry, I can't be more specific in terms of coral products locally other than black coral type jewelry.
Thank you.
Okay. All right. Any further questions? If not, we'll move on to the next measure. Thank you very much. Next measure, House Bill 1258, relating to Hawaiian homelands. We have testimony from DLNR, Mr. Roy Hardy. If you're there, please proceed.
Good morning, Chair Tarnas. Good to see you. Vice Chair Bronco and the rest of the committee members. The department stands on its written testimony for House Bill 1258 for the non-substantive changes.
Thank you very much. Next, we have testimony with comments from Mr. William Isla with Department of Hawaiian Homelands. Mr. Isla, if you're available, please proceed.
Aloha, this is Lehua Kinilaukano on behalf of Chairman William Isla. Just stand on our written comments.
Thank you very much. Next, we received testimony in opposition from numerous individuals. I won't read them, there are so many. But please note, all testifiers, that we do have your written testimony. Members, that's the testimony that we have before us today. Any questions for our testifiers? If not, we'll move on to the next measure. Thank you. House Bill 1351 relating to conservation mitigation banks. We have testimony in support from DLNR, Mr. David Smith. Mr. Smith, the testimony, please provide us your oral testimony. The floor is yours.
Yeah, good morning, Chair Tarnas, Vice Chair Bronco, members of the committee. David Smith, I'm the administrator with the Division of Forestry and Wildlife. And we support this measure. I think it's a great bill. And we'll stand on a written testimony. This is just an opportunity to bring some private investment into endangered species recovery. And we already have companies that are interested in this. So it'd be great to get the authorization to be able to set up and manage mitigation banks. We just have one small change to add entities so that it's not just to persons, and that's in our testimony. So thanks very much. Appreciate it.
Thank you very much. We also have Afshin Siddiqui from DLNR available for questions. Unless you would like to provide any testimony yourself, please proceed.
Afshin is backing us up. If you have any questions, she's our native species biologist.
Got it. Okay, thank you very much. So Afshin Siddiqui is available for questions should we have any members. We also have testimony in support from Melody Aduha, Environmental Caucus of the Democratic Party of Hawaii. Ms. Aduha, the floor is yours. Please proceed.
Thank you very much, Chair. Good morning, Chair. Good morning, Vice Chair Bronco and members of the Committee on Water and Land. My name is Melody Aduha. I co-chair the Environmental Caucus of the Democratic Party of Hawaii. We do submit our testimony in support of this measure. I think one thing that came to mind when I read this bill was in the preamble where it indicated that 20 years ago, the federal government, as well as I believe it was 31 other states, have already adopted this type of conservation mitigation banks. So we are in favor of it. Our platform, which was adopted in 2018, it provides that the conservation, preservation, and restoration of Hawaii's natural resources are connected to the health and welfare of our people. Therefore, we support the conservation and protection of our natural environment. That is in the Democratic Party platform. This bill is in accord with the platform, and therefore the Environmental Caucus supports this bill, and we request that it passes on to the next committee. Mahalo, Chair, Vice Chair, and members of the Committee of Water and Land.
Thank you very much. We have written testimony in support from Hawaii Reef and Ocean Coalition. Testimony providing comments from Bronson Kainoa Kiyoshi Azama. Mr. Azama, the floor is yours. Please proceed.
Aloha mai kako again. So I do support this measure and like the intent and the impact that it can have to really mitigate some of our issues here in Hawaii, especially when we have a lot of adversely impacted environments. I just have some underlying concerns regarding like, because sometimes whenever we do mitigation, we tend to look at just one project and the one issue that causes, but I would like to see it have a holistic approach, because in some areas like Kane, for example, we lost a lot of our wetlands and a lot of our resources. So just restoring one habitat doesn't necessarily bring back all that was lost. So just some things to consider when it comes to this, excuse me, conservation, mitigation banks, that we really consider a holistic approach to the environment as a whole that's been affected Maukatumakai. Other than that, I have nothing further to say. Mahalo.
Thank you very much. We have written testimony in support from numerous individuals: Jolie Wanger, Sherry Pollack, James Mounier, David Smith, Melissa Lawrence, and Eric Olson. That's all the testimony we have before us, members. Are there any questions that you have for our testifiers? If not, we'll move on to the next measure. Thank you very much. House Bill 486 relating to transportation. We have testimony in support from Russell Suji with DLNR. Mr. Suji, the floor is yours. Please proceed.
Chair, members of the committee, Russell Suji for the department. We'll stand on our written comments, available for questions if you have any. Thanks.
Thank you very much. We have testimony in support from the Department of Transportation, Ms. Lynn Araki Regan. Please proceed.
Good morning, Chair and members. My name is Lynn Araki Regan from the State Department of Transportation. We stand on our written testimony and support. Thank you.
Thank you very much. That's all the testimony we have before us, members. Any questions for our testifiers? Yes, Representative Kobayashi.
For DLNR. Question is, you say that there is no such thing as roads in limbo. What happened to the bills that were passed recently by the House? Did they ever get into law that would have transferred roads from roads to the county?
Yeah, that's actually codified already in HRS 264, Representative. And so our position has always been that, unless they're under the State Department of Transportation Highways Division as a state highway, all the other roads are turned over to the county by operation of the various laws that was passed by 264 and its predecessors. Unfortunately, the counties don't always agree with that law, and there's also the issue about the private developer roads.
Right.
I believe that law passed. I haven't been really following that one. I was more following the other roads that are usually the dispute is between the state and the counties.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you very much. Any other questions, members? Seeing none, let's move on to the next measure. House Bill 77 relating to lands controlled by the state. We have testimony from the Office of Hawaiian Affairs providing comments. And then we have testimony in support from Hawaii Housing Finance and Development Corporation, HHFDC. Ms. Denise Matsubara, if you're available, please proceed. The floor is yours.
Good morning, Chair, Vice Chair, members of the committee. Thank you so much for the opportunity. We strongly support this measure that will help families, many of whom have been on the land since the 70s and the 80s, finally cross the finish line to home ownership. I just wanted to clarify that this measure affects remnant parcels in existing projects. Out of the 609 total units in this category, about 13% remain with the fee interest still unpurchased, and we just want to help these families finally cross the finish line. Thank you very much for the opportunity.
Thank you very much. I appreciate your good work. Members, that's all the testimony we have before us. Do you have any questions for HHFDC? Seeing none, we'll move on to the next measure. House Bill 502 relating to rural districts. We have testimony in support from the Hawaii Association of Realtors. That's all the testimony we have. And there's no one here that we could ask questions of. So with your indulgence, we'll move on. Thank you. House Bill 1070 relating to university districts. We have testimony providing comments from the Office of Planning. Whoever is here representing the Office of Planning, the floor is yours. Please proceed.
Good morning, Chair Tarnas and Vice Chair Bronco. With me this morning are Justine Ni'ipali, the Program Manager for our Coastal Zone Management Program, and Dr. Shichao Lee, our Coastal Zone Specialist. The Office of Planning provides comments and raises some concerns, and we stand on our written testimony and we are available for questions. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. We have testimony providing comments from DLNR, Mr. Russell Suji.
Yeah.
Please proceed.
Good morning, Chair, members of the committee. Yeah, the department stands on its written comments and available for questions if you have any on the UH. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. And next we have testimony in support from University of Hawaii, Mr. Calvert Young or Jesse Suki. Please proceed.
Good morning, Chair, members. Calvert Young, Vice President for Budget and Finance for the University of Hawaii. The university stands on its testimony in support of the measure.
Thank you. And we have testimony in opposition from the City and County of Honolulu Department of Planning and Permitting. That's all the testimony we have before us, members. Any questions for our testifiers? I have some questions. It appears that when the university was preparing this measure, that you didn't have any conversations with the Office of Planning or the city or the county governments because they raised very serious concerns. Perhaps I could ask Ms. Evans if you could just highlight in your testimony what you have stated are the major concerns that you had, just so the committee is reminded of that.
Thank you, Chair Tarnas. I'd like to ask Justine Mihi-Pali if she could summarize those serious concerns for you. Justine?
Hello, Chair, Vice Chair. Can you guys hear me?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. Thank you. Yes, we just wanted to raise some comments regarding the intention to supersede other county ordinances, and then also to make it consistent to the extent practicable, or however it was described. I apologize, I don't have that specific language in front of me. We're unclear about who makes that determination for consistency with other county ordinances and rules. And so we wanted to raise that concern about county planning. We also felt that it sets a precedent for the state entities to avoid compliance with the county land use policies. And then, these campuses are on the county lands often, or in those respective counties serving those communities, and therefore felt that the counties were the most appropriate to review these plans and to continue to administer the appropriate permits and planning functions. And then, so just based on our understanding, and it's a little bit unclear in this measure, this may include development for Maui's Community College, Kapiolani Community College, and then potentially the John A. Burns School of Medicine, which all fall in the SMA. And so those activities within those campuses, potentially, as I said, it's a little bit unclear based on the language, would be included in this measure. We also felt that it wasn't necessarily appropriate for us as a state agency to apply county SMA and shoreline setback rules or ordinances to review these types of applications for these potential campus development plans. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And then just a follow-up question for the university, Mr. Calvert Young. Could you comment on some of these concerns that have been raised by the Office of Planning about how this could be best approached?
Certainly. So university does recognize, Office of Planning and DPP, city DPP's concerns. I think Office of Planning has raised good points and appropriate points. I would say that the university views this measure, though, as not circumventing existing county permitting or even Office of Planning shoreline management area statutes. This seeks to place a university district overlay that I think is consistent to allow for the university to have some control over the actual development of facilities on its campuses, all of which exist on state land, not county land. They do exist within the county. The bill actually makes clear that the application would be for campus proper. So it would not be for the Jabsum Kaka'ako location. It would affect the Maui campus because that is a bona fide campus, and it would affect Kapiolani as well as the other community colleges.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions, members? Representative Kobayashi.
For University of Hawaii, on page 5, you say toward the bottom that bottom half, Board of Regents shall establish campus development rules related to health, etc. Shall follow existing county rules, ordinances, etc. as closely as is consistent. But then later on in the same page, you say campus development rules shall supersede all other county ordinances and rules. So I'm not too sure what you're trying to get at. Is there a specific set of county rules and ordinances that you want to eliminate?
I don't believe the university has any specific targets of county rules. I would point out that across the various counties in the state, there's actually some counties that already have university district zoning. And this bill doesn't overcome the need for county issued permits. So it seems like completely impractical that any state agency could view that they could overcome county reviews in the sake that they need to get permits for everything from building to wastewater to water infrastructure. So I think there are other agencies that have similar within the state agencies that have similar air quoting supersede powers over the counties, but in practice you cannot overcome the county's jurisdiction for permitting.
But the language in the bill says that campus development rules shall supersede all other county ordinances and rules related to use, zoning, planning, and development.
Yes, but this bill or the university or any other state agency can't issue permits. So although you could supersede for other matters, when in practice you will not be able to overcome county permitting and therefore the county review processes.
I'm sorry, but isn't county permitting authorized by county ordinances and rules?
Yes.
So you can supersede them under this bill. You shall supersede all other county ordinances and rules.
But you won't be able to get a permit.
Okay.
Okay.
I'm a little confused. Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Appreciate the questioning, Representative Kobayashi and others. Any further questions on this matter? If not, thank you very much, testifiers. We're going to move on to the next measure. House Bill 1130 relating to transit-oriented development. We have testimony from the Office of Planning. Mary Alice Evans or Rodney Funakoshi, please proceed.
Good morning, Chair Tarnas and Vice Chair Bronco and members of the committee. The Office of Planning is in strong support of HB 1130 HD1, which supports the work of the Transit-Oriented Development Council. Thank you so much for hearing this measure.
Thank you. And we have testimony also from the Hawaii Interagency Council for Transit-Oriented Development, the TOD Council, and Ms. Evans is available for questions if we have any. Members, that's all the testimony we have. Do you have any questions for the Office of Planning or the TOD Council? Seeing none, we will move on to the next measure. Thank you. House Bill 1352, relating to surplus military lands. We have testimony and support from the Office of Hawaiian Affairs. Please proceed.
Hi, aloha and good morning. Chair Tarnas, Vice Chair Bronco, and members of the committee, thank you for the opportunity to testify. Leitani Peltier on behalf of the Office of Hawaiian Affairs. We stand on our testimony in support of HB 1352 HD1, but we would respectfully ask this committee to consider an amendment to include OHA in the discussions contemplated by this measure, and also to ensure that these discussions include the need for remediation and restoration of ceded lands currently under federal ownership or control. Our written testimony contains suggested language to effectuate this, and I am available for questions. Mahalo nui for the opportunity to testify.
Thank you very much. We have testimony in support from Melody Aduha, Environmental Caucus of the Democratic Party of Hawaii. Ms. Aduha, the floor is yours. Please proceed.
Thank you very much, Chair Tarnas, and thank you very much, Vice Chair Bronco and members of the Committee on Water and Land. My name is Melody Aduha. I serve as co-chair of the Environmental Caucus of the Democratic Party of Hawaii, as well as co-chair of the Human Environmental Impacts Committee of the Environmental Caucus. This bill has been in the works for a while from our caucus. This is the second year that it has come up. This year we had asked Representative Lisa Martin to assist us in this bill, and it now has come this far, and we're very grateful for that. If I can go on now with the testimony, we feel very strongly about this because of the military land that is affected, such as Pohakuloa training area, which has been covered by the Hawaii Supreme Court in Ching versus Chase, as well as areas like Waikane and Hi'ia training areas. Apparently, I did a search a while back, and it's almost every single island and has been affected by military training and usage, and the inability or the not having to sufficiently return the lands back to the state. For more than 100 years, the United States government has established naval and military bases in Hawaii without very much way of consent of the people of Hawaii, who were not even organized as a state for a large part of the time. So this bill calls for a level training playing field for the people of Hawaii. The Democratic Party of Hawaii has adopted in its 2018 state convention clear safeguards to protect the Aina against military destruction. Specifically on page 22, the party platform indicates that the Democrats support the protection of our Aina against destruction of military use. The important thing about this bill, members of the committee and chair, vice chair, is that it places the state in a more leading role in pressing the United States in releasing the properties that it is retaining under its control and engaging in more thorough environmental remediation than what it has been willing to do in the past. This bill would make great improvements in both of these areas and would provide transparency in requiring detailed annual reporting of these important matters. Fundamentally, this bill intends to shift the responsibility for the lead from the federal government to the state and pushes state officials to do what they need to do. Require the federal government to turn back the lands to the state in an environmentally—
Could you please summarize and wrap up?
Yes, Chair. I'm actually at the end and I am available for any questions. Thank you very much.
Excellent. Thank you so much. I appreciate your testimony today.
Thank you.
Next, we have written testimony in support from numerous individuals: Charles Ice, Cheryl B., Jolie Wanger, Raylene Yeomans, Sherry Pollock, Ted Bolin, James Raymond, Clarence Ching, David Smith, Mary Locke, Melissa Lawrence, and Kimiona Kane. That's all the testimony we have, members. Do you have any questions for our testifiers? I have a question for the Office of Planning. I know you're there, but you didn't submit testimony on this measure. If I may ask you, Mary Alice Evans, I was informed by the introducer when she drafted the HD1, which we have before us today, that it was in consultation with OP. So my question to you is, would you be able to accomplish this without any additional appropriations?
Chair Tarnas, thank you very much. I want to express my appreciation for Representative Lisa Martin, who was very helpful in understanding the limitations of the Office of Planning and our willingness to support this. I believe as written in the HD1, the Office of Planning can take on this role without additional resources. If you'll note that the inventory of lands is going to be extracted from the public lands inventory maintained by the Department of Land and Natural Resources as a digital searchable database, and that the requirement for reporting on known contaminants based on past environmental studies does not require new additional work at this time. The Office of Planning's mission is to coordinate input from state and county agencies to provide the legislature and the governor with information, and we're happy to fulfill that mission. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I appreciate that explanation. Members, any other questions of our testifiers? If not, we'll move on to the next measure. House Bill 856 relating to waste management. We have testimony providing comments from the Department of Health. DOH, if you're on, please proceed with your testimony.
Good morning, Chair Tarnas, Vice Chair Bronco. This is Lene Ichinotsuo with the Department of Health Solid and Hazardous Waste Branch. We stand on our written testimony providing comments. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Next, we have testimony providing comments from the Department of Agriculture. Mr. Morris Atta or his designee, please proceed.
Good morning, Chair Tarnas. Morris Atta for the department. We stand on our written testimony providing comments and would request that you consider the proposed amendment language that we have in our testimony. Thank you.
Thank you very much. We have written testimony in support from Ramsey Mansour, Hawaii County Department of Environmental Management. Testimony in opposition from Gwen Rulona, UFCW 480. Testimony in opposition from Keali'i Pang. Testimony in opposition from Makana Paris. Mr. Paris, the floor is yours. Please proceed.
Aloha, Chair Tarnas, Vice Chair Bronco, and members of the House Committee on Water and Land. My name is Makana Paris, and I'm the president of Prince Kuhia Hawaiian Civic Club. We stand in opposition to the bill before you. We do believe that the conversation on artisan scale composting is necessary and timely, as Hawaii envisions a future that makes landfills unnecessary as we turn our opala into reusable resources that drive our local economy. However, the bill before you, unfortunately, conflates the conversation on artisan scale composting with Hawaii's buffer zone law. The bill before you will negatively affect the buffer zone law that was recently enacted last year as Act 73 that protects our communities from opala. The House overwhelmingly passed the bill, concurred with the Senate, and signed into law by Governor David Ige. Thus, Hawaii took the bold step of passing one of the most significant environmental justice laws in our history. By protecting the buffer zone law, we keep the promise made last year to the future generations that we will protect them from opala. We do believe that the artisan scale composting discussion can continue in its own right and not intertwined with Hawaii's environmental justice buffer zone law by considering the conversation through HB 861. We finally ask that you hold the bill in committee and reaffirm our state's commitment to a clean and healthful environment for all. Mahalo and have a wonderful day.
Thank you very much. We have written testimony in opposition from the Association of Hawaiian Civic Clubs. Testimony in opposition from ILWU Local 142. Testimony in opposition from Hawaii Labor Coalition. Testimony in opposition from IATSE Local 665. Testimony in support from 350 Hawaii. in support from Zero Waste Big Island, in opposition from Hawaii Building and Construction Trades Council. Testimony in support from Jeff McKnight, Democratic Party Hawaii Environmental Caucus. Testimony in support from Roseanne Michaud. Testimony in opposition from a number of individuals, Melvin Paris, Henrietta Paris, and Anthony Makana Paris. Testimony in opposition from Kamuela Werner. Mr. Werner, if you're available, the floor is yours.
Aloha, Chair Tarnas, Vice Chair Branco, and members of the House Committee on Water and Land. From Maili and Nanakuli, I'm Kamuela Werner. I'm in opposition to the intent of House Bill 856 HD1 that would, in Part 1, exclude composting facilities from the buffer zone requirement as stated in my written testimony. In 2020, my community of Nanakuli fought hard for the passage of Senate Bill 2386, that is now Act 73. And I sincerely thank those members of this committee who voted to pass that environmental justice measure, which in part ensures future waste and disposal facilities are 1/2 mile away from homes, schools, and hospitals across the state. According to the Hawaii Department of Health, a waste or disposal facility includes a solid waste reduction facility as defined in HRS Chapter 342G-1. This term also includes a facility used as a composting plant, and for good reason. According to the most current and available public health studies, there is evidence linking bioaerosol emissions from composting facilities to poor respiratory health in nearby residents. Moreover, there is evidence that workers at compost facilities have an increased risk of developing health problems. Though the most current systematic literature review on this matter found insufficient evidence to provide a quantitative comment on exposure risk, I believe our residents, especially the poor and politically vulnerable, should not be guinea pigs or unintended casualties. For these reasons, please maintain the public health protections of Act 73 by not passing HB 856 HD1. Mahalo nui.
Thank you very much. Members, we have testimony in support from Ted Bolin and also from Mary Locke. That's all the testimony we have before us today, members. Do you have any questions for our testifiers? Representative Kobayashi.
For Department of Ag and for Department of Health, the definition for artisan scale composting operation talks about no more than 1 cubic yard of green waste, trimmings, etc. per month. What kind of operation would this then envision? Who would this apply to?
Representative Kobayashi, I believe it is intended to apply to the relatively smaller composters. It's not your typical large-scale commercial composter.
No, but are there any people who would be adversely affected? I mean, I could imagine that there must be some residential homes, or I don't know, somebody who could average less than a cubic yard of green waste.
So my understanding is that these will be only applicable to facilities that are located on agricultural or industrial zoned properties. So it's not intended to be on residential or commercial zoned land. So I believe it's intended to be for the larger properties.
All right, thank you.
Thank you very much. Members, any other questions? Okay, if not, we will adjourn our hearing or recess our hearing. So we're going to go right into decision making. House Bill 414. I really appreciate the discussion. I've spoken with the introducer about his desired outcomes, and it's clear from the testimony as well as additional testimony I received that there may be unintended consequences from this measure that had not really been envisioned. And I'd like to defer this measure and urge the introducer to work on it some more with the stakeholders and come back with a bill that is more specifically crafted to address his concerns and not have any unintended negative consequences on this important matter. So my recommendation is to defer with all due deference to our vice chair. Thank you. Next measure, House Bill 1258. This is a vehicle bill which is no longer needed, so we're going to defer this measure. House Bill 1351 related to conservation mitigation banks. My recommendation is to adopt the amendments from DLNR, defect the effective date, and pass out an HD1. Any discussion, members? Representative Kobayashi.
Do we need a definition for conservation mitigation banks?
Good point.
I'm open to doing that. So I can further amend it to include a definition of conservation mitigation banks. To those who are in the business, you know what it is, but it's appropriate in a statute to make it clear. So I appreciate that recommendation. So that would be an additional amendment to define conservation mitigation bank. Other discussion? Seeing none, Vice Chair, please take a vote on HD1.
Sure. The recommendation of the chair is to pass House Bill number 1351 with amendments. Chair and Vice Chair vote aye. Representative Ganaden?
Aye.
Representative Kobayashi?
Aye.
Representative Kong?
Aye.
Representative Morikawa?
Aye.
Representative Ono is excused. Representative McDermott?
Reservation.
The measure passes.
Thank you very much. House Bill 486 relating to transportation. Cognizant of what DLNR said, I would defer to the Department of Transportation and their suggestion to approve the bill to move forward for further discussion. It already has a defective date, so I recommend we pass this as is. Discussion, members. Seeing none, Vice Chair, please take the vote.
The recommendation of the chair is to pass House Bill number 486 HD1 as is, noting the excused absence of Representative Ono. Is there any reservations? Any no votes? The measure passes.
Thank you. Moving on, House Bill 77 relating to lands controlled by the state. This already has a defective date and it received positive testimony. My recommendation is to pass it as is. Discussion, members. Seeing none, Vice Chair, please take the vote.
The recommendation of the chair is to pass House Bill 77 HD1 as is, noting the excused absence of Representative Ono. Is there any reservations? Any no votes? The measure passes.
Thank you. Moving on, House Bill 502 relating to rural districts. We received positive testimony on this one. My recommendation is to make some technical non-substantive amendments. It already has a defective date, so I'd like to move this forward with an HD2 with that recommendation. Discussion, members. Seeing none, Vice Chair, please take the vote.
The recommendation of the chair is to pass House Bill 502 HD1 with amendments, noting the excused absence of Representative Ono. Is there any reservations? Any no votes? The measure passes.
Thank you very much. Moving on, House Bill 1070. Thank you for the discussion on this measure. I would like to defer this measure and urge the University of Hawaii to work with the Office of Planning and with the county planning departments to come back with a bill that is better crafted so that it actually achieves your desired outcomes, which I think are valid, but do not cause conflicts and concerns which have been raised in the testimony. So with all due respect to the university, I think since this is an administration bill, I will defer it and urge you to work with the stakeholders, primarily OP and the counties, to come back with a bill that really achieves what you want to achieve. That's my recommendation, members. Moving on, House Bill 1130 relating to transit-oriented development. Members, this is a result of recent public hearings that were done by the Office of Planning. I think it's a good step forward. It already has a defective date. I would like to pass out an HD2 with making some technical non-substantive amendments. Discussion. Seeing none, Vice Chair, please take the vote.
The recommendation of the chair is to pass House Bill 1130 HD1 with amendments, noting the excused absence of Representative Ono. Is there any reservations? Any no votes? The measure passes.
Thank you very much. Moving on, House Bill 1352 related to surplus military land. This measure really is to provide information. It's not taking a position on any future actions, but it provides information, which I think is very important in our conversations going forward. Office of Planning says they can do this without additional appropriations. So my recommendation, I recognize OHA asked to be named specifically in here, but since they are another government agency, I think they are included in that language. And I don't want to name one agency and not others. So out of, though I recognize they wanted to be listed separately, they are in fact included as a state government agency. So my recommendation is to pass this as is. It already has a defective date, so we can continue this conversation. So my recommendation, pass as is. Any discussion, members? Seeing none, Vice Chair, please take the vote.
The recommendation of the chair is to pass House Bill 1352 HD1 as is, noting the excused absence of Representative Ono. Is there any reservations? Any no votes? The measure passes.
Thank you very much. Moving on, the last measure on our agenda before we go to the final decision-making agenda. This is House Bill 856. My recommendation is to defer this measure. I think that while the intention of the original bill was valid, it has gotten conflated with a number of other serious matters. So I would like to defer this measure, urge the introducer to work with the Department of Health and work with those who are opposing this so that they can come back with a better bill next time. So we're deferring this measure. Thank you. Okay, we're going to move on, if I may, directly into decision-making on the last measure, House Bill 1019. We heard this bill previously on last Thursday, it was, I guess, February 11th. And at that time, members, you may remember that we had asked the DLNR to work with the representatives of the ocean recreation industry to come up with language that they would support. Also to come back with language that answers the question from Rep. Kobayashi about who actually would be included in this. And so before you, we passed out a proposed HD1, which does do that. So it basically adds, it removes the non-resident language in the very first couple of pages, but it's really on page 6 where the additional language is highlighted there, members, where it says all operators of commercial vessels, watercraft, and water sports equipment that are required to have a commercial operator permit pursuant to section 13-256(3) parens A, HAR, shall collect an ocean stewardship user fee from each passenger carried or customer serviced. The ocean stewardship user fee shall be $1 per passenger or customer, shall be adjusted every 5 years to match changes to the CPI in the Honolulu area, provided, however, the fee shall not be adjusted more than 10% every 5 years. Fees collected pursuant to this section shall not be counted toward gross revenues for purposes of section 210C5 HRS. All fees collected pursuant to this section shall be transferred to the department, which is DLNR, on a monthly basis and shall be deposited in the Ocean Stewardship Special Fund. And then on the following page, it basically clarifies that the department shall adopt rules pursuant to Chapter 91 to carry out purposes of this part. And then the department would prefer that they have to go through Chapter 91 because they want it to be a consultative process with the stakeholders. I recommend that this have a defective date, so it would take effect January 1, 2050. But were it to take effect upon approval, it would state that this ocean stewardship fee shall not be collected until January 1, 2024, with the intent that it would allow some time for the industry to recover from the terrible downturn in the industry that we've experienced from the pandemic. So I commend Department of Land and Natural Resources Aquatics Division for working with the industry to come up with language that they would support. And I offer that as an HD1 to the members for their consideration. Any discussion, members? Representative Kong.
I love DNR as much as anyone else, but you'll see actually continuing forward, any increase in any cost of living per se, or fees, or however you want to put it, I'll probably be not to be happy with. So I'll just go with reservations, but that's just how it'll be for this whole session. So thank you.
Understood. Thank you very much for highlighting that concern. Other discussion, members? Seeing none, Vice Chair, please take the vote on HB 1019 HD1.
The recommendation of the chair is to pass HB 1019 HD1, noting the excused absence of Representative Ono. Is there any reservations? Noting with reservations from Representative Kong. Any no votes?
No vote.
Representative McDermott? Thank you. The measure passes.
Thank you very much. Members, I really appreciate your kokua today. And with that, our work is complete and this meeting is adjourned.